Hey guys, welcome to the Artist Notepad. We'll get into that bit a little bit in a little bit, but I just want to say before we kick on in, a little bit of language warning for this one. We have to quote the film, and there is some swearing in the film, and we do quote with the swear words. I do not bleep myself. It is not censored, so pretty spicy if you ask me. But David, do you want to say a quick word before we kick on into the old theme song? No?
No, all good here.
All right, enjoy.
enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Artist Notepad, where we explore artistry, we talk life, and we talk It's Not Your Fault. I'm David.
And I'm Jack. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Tan and Chill, in which we are going to discuss Good Will Hunting, directed by Gus Van Sant, starring Matt Damon, Robin Williams, Ben Affleck, and Minnie Driver. But first, David, as always, how you doing, eh?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, eh?
Hey, I'm from Southie, eh?
Yeah, I'm from Boston, right? No, I'm good, man. I'm doing, yeah. My accent game's a bit weak tonight. But yeah,
well, it's good because we're leveling each other in that regard. Like, I don't think either one of us has got a standout Boston accent, to be honest.
Something we got to work on. But yeah, man, I'm good. Being in home most of the time. Spent some time exercising. Mm-hmm. The gym around my area is closed for obvious reasons. So I was just at the playground.
Not just around your area, man.
Everywhere.
All gyms.
New South Wales. Except regional New South Wales. I think they're still doing pretty good.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But did some exercising, ate some food at home. It's good to have like people in the house though. Like my best mate's just next door. I told him we're doing the pod, so he's just keeping quiet.
Legit?
Yeah, man. Huh?
Is that like, are you serious?
Yeah, he's legit next door right now as we're speaking.
Oh, wait. I thought you meant he lived next door, like in the next apartment.
No. He's in the room, like behind my room.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Did you forget that you were doing the podcast?
No. Why would I forget? Come on now. Come on.
Did you actually forget?
No. I wasn't. I was like watching the film, like I started to watch it a bit late. I forgot that it was 2 hours long. So I was like, oh, it should be okay. So I ate. Watch the movie. But here I am. I'm doing good, man. How you doing? Eh?
Yeah, not bad, man. Not bad at all. I had a bit of a similar day, although I did manage to get outside. I went to the shops and I did some grocery shopping. Not to brag or anything, but yeah, got some stuff for dinner, and I made dinner this evening. We made butter chicken using this like a meal kit. It was pretty good, but it didn't really taste like butter chicken. That's the only thing. So, but yeah, it was nice. Like I followed the instructions, which was satisfying. Yeah. But yeah, it didn't really taste like butter chicken by the end. But that's all good. Filled the belly. Amelia and I have started. You know, it's a spiral that we're on because we've gone from Shiraz to gin.
Oh yeah,
but it's Shiraz gin. It's this brand called Four Pillars, and they've made this like Shiraz gin mix.
Ooh.
Yeah. So been having a little bit of that. So yeah, feeling nice and bubbly. Feeling ready to do a little podcast on this fantastic movie. And David, we should probably not delay anymore, knowing our track record when it comes to reviewing movies. Obviously, there's not an illustrious film guest with us tonight, unfortunately. So you guys will just have to deal with the outtakes from you and myself, David. But I think that maybe we have enough to say to keep these people on their toes. What do you reckon?
Yeah, stay on your toes the whole time you're listening to the pod, okay, guys?
Even if they get sore.
On your toes. Yeah. Be a ballerina just for an hour.
And if you have an injury or anything, I just want you to know ahead of time, it's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Man, great film though, bro. Like, I'm really keen to talk about it today. Like,
absolutely.
I hadn't seen this in like years, but yeah, let's just get right into it. Like, as always, if you have ready, then did you want to give a little bit of a breakdown of what the situations are?
Sure thing. And before we head into the film, as usual, just give an obvious spoiler warning. If you guys have not seen this film, please go and watch it. It is a fantastic film.
Doing? Go watch it.
Yeah, David couldn't have said it better myself, but watch it, come back and listen to this. So, Good Will Hunting, directed by Gus Van Sant. Cast is Matt Damon as... Matt Damon as Will Hunting. Sorry, I for a second I said Matt Damon and I thought of Ben Affleck, and I'm just like, Ben Affleck doesn't play Will Hunting, and he doesn't. Ben Affleck plays Chucky. Ron Williams as Sean, Minnie Driver as Skylar, Stellan Skarsgård as Gerard Lambeau. There's obviously some other actors and actresses as well, but this is the primary cast right here. Each one of them is just absolutely fantastic, and props to Gus Van Sant. I haven't seen any of his other work. I've heard of one of his other movies, Elephant, but I've never seen it. So I don't really have anything more to say about him. But in terms of, I think that this is Robin Williams' best film. I think this is Ben Affleck's best film. It's arguably Matt Damon's best film, but I wouldn't be as keen to put that down straight away because he's fantastic in other things as well. But I do think this is Ben Affleck's best film that I've seen. And for me, Robin Williams, this is what...
Really?
Personally, this is what made me understand what the hype was about, and maybe I'll talk a bit about that later.
Have you seen Jumanji?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
No, I was just trying to be dumb.
Okay,
I was just trying to say
succeeded.
That's his best film. Now, Jumanji is a great film too.
It is. But yeah, the film came out in 1997, as we discussed a few years before I was born. So, sorry, few months before I was born. So there you go. Now you guys all know I'm a youngin', but I'm here to give you some knowledge about what I think about this film. So David, opening thoughts. What did you think? Especially like revisiting this after some time. How was your experience rewatching Good Will Hunting? And maybe you can talk about when you first watched it as well.
But like before I say that, Casey Affleck is in it too, and I didn't know he had Ben Affleck had a brother who was outshadowed by him, but. But oh man, like just going back into the film Good Will Hunting, I think I first saw it when I was in high school, maybe 10 or 11, so I was 16 or 17 years old. Now seeing it not many years, but a few years later, like I forgot about a lot of the funny, quirky, kind of awkward, cringy to like heartwarming moments the film really holds in the 2 hours that it has. And everything just flooded back in. Like it was just so good to sit back and just watch again. I remember just watching it where like on the opening scenes, like the first 20 minutes or so, it seemed kind of cringy in a way. Like I was like, wow, this is what the film looked like, or this is what the settings and like the characters, how they interacted, and I guess like how the story develops, because like you have to build upon something. Like you have to show the audience what's gonna happen, like who the main characters are and stuff. And I just felt like, I don't know, like a whole bunch of emotions. There's a bit of joy, there's a bit of like, heartwarming scenes, and also just I just felt just joy after leaving the film. And like now we're talking about it right away, but I felt like one thing, if we're talking about the cast again, like before Robin Williams comes in, I felt like he was the gluing piece for the whole story. Like he plays such a big part to the end result that we get from the main character, Will. But I think watching it again just made me realize why it's one of my top favorite movies. But yeah, that's me. How about you? How long has it been since you've seen the film?
Well, I didn't actually watch it that long ago for the first time. I always knew about this film, but I only actually watched this probably, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3. So probably about 3 years ago. So it's not like I've seen this ages ago. And it's not like I've seen it heaps of times either. Rewatching it for this was my second time watching the film. So, but I knew from the first time I watched that film that it was one of my favorite films, even though I'd never seen it again. Like even when on episode 50, if you guys haven't checked that out yet, go on our YouTube, check out our episode 50, which thanks to, once again to
guys.
Made by Who and Amelia for helping us out with that. But we talk about this film, or we touch on it briefly, and straight away, as soon as you said it, you can see my reaction. Like as soon as someone mentioned this film, I'm just like, amazing film. And I've only seen it. I'd only seen it once up until last night, which is when I rewatched it. But it's interesting you said that it's cringy, because the only thing that I found cringy from the start was the fight scene. Like when they jump those guys, because the like action cinematography is just sorry, not cinematography, the action
sequence, or I
can't remember the word, sequence, it's just so like, it's like it's staring into the camera like and it's just like,
but I think that's what I love about that scene as well, because
I like it too. It's charming in a dated kind of way, but I don't actually find any of it, apart from maybe that, and as I said, it's like cringe in a humorous way, but I don't find any of it cringe, because I think they do such a good job of representing that, like, that boyish bravado type of lifestyle, like, and they do such a good job of like creating such a strong reputation for these four guys in such a short period of time. And even within the group, you can see like the hierarchy, and you can see the different characters within the group. You got like Matt Damon. Far out. Why am I getting these guys confused? Ben Affleck's character, who's like he's like the cool guy, and then Matt Damon's like the smart sort of like hothead, and then you've got Casey Affleck's character, who is sort of just the guy who gets made fun of, very impulsive and
the punching bag,
exactly,
like a bit.
And then you've got Cole Hauser, I think, who plays Billy.
Cole Hauser,
and
Billy.
He's kind of just like the super chill character. We find out a bit later that he's a mechanic, and he just seems like a really like nice, down to earth guy, but very just sort of reserved and just like one of those cool cucumbers who you'd probably never become best mates with, because he seems a little bit shallow, but he'd always be good to have around. You know what I mean?
He'll still be loyal. Like he's still loyal to the boys, but
exactly.
When he's first, go.
I was just going to say, it's just so cool the way that like that they, like I when we were watching, we start with that scene of Ben Affleck's character walking up the stairs to Matt Damon's house, and like that strut that he's got, and Amelia just like, because she was watching it with me, and she's just like, are you serious? Like, and I'm just like, yes, like this is how some people walk, and like even the walk, man. Like they, and the clothing, and they were like wearing Champion, which I enjoyed, because like Champion's now like one of the biggest brands, and it's always been a big brand, but like it's just interesting to see like a movie sort of 1997, that's 23 years ago, like still, such a, just I don't know, no, 24 years ago, I was right. I just find that interesting, like how it's represented there as well, and you can just tell, but like it's funny how some things never change, like the tracksuits and the icebreakers and stuff, the stuff that lads still wear these days, they're still wearing in like the 90s, and I just love the way they depict this neighborhood, and they depict these four, and the way they strut around like they own the place. Like they do such a good job of representing that early manhood bravado that some young men, normally misguided men, have, like that like bottomless amount of confidence, but with that underlying like self-consciousness as well. Like it's really, really interesting, and I just think they do such a great job of sort of creating this chemistry between the four without much dialogue to create it. You can just tell by their body language and their attitude and their walking and everything. Like it's just, I love it. I love the introduction to these four guys.
No, like I think it transitions well, but I think because it had been so long since I've seen it, and like trying to see, like, I forgot most of the early parts of the film. I just felt the sense of cringe, but it's a mixture of like nostalgia too. Because Ben Affleck's swag in the film is, like you mentioned, that it's on point. Like, I'm seeing how he's dressed at this first scene with the tracksuit, as you mentioned, and like even later in the scenes when what is it? He's walking down to see Will, and then he just as the conversation he had prior with him, he's just gone. He's gone to see the girl, but yeah, even then I'm like, yeah, go Ben. you go with your swag. No, but yeah. Cool.
I also really
like,
I like the way that, and once again, it's funny how every film we tend to talk about has like a sort of an exploration, even if it's a small one in this film, of class, and like this film definitely does explore class, and it's got like this big sort of disparity between the MIT, the rich students, and the sort of the poor sort of neighborhood boys from Southie, which you've got, obviously these four guys, but we also find out that Sean, played by Robin Williams, is he grew up in Southie as well. And it's interesting, like that does play a role. So I just thought I'd point that out. And that's definitely got a big part to play in the molding of Will Hunting, as well as the other three boys. But I think especially Will, he really does embrace that. And we'll see that later on in the film when he talks about his plans for the future and Ben Affleck's response to that. It's, really interesting. But David, this film sort of goes along a path of introducing these guys and instantly showing that they're the sort of guys who are going to get into a lot of trouble. They just want to have a good time. They're just chasing that, chasing pleasure. And we don't really see anything that indicates anything more to them until that first scene when Matt Damon's character, Will Hunting, is in MIT sweeping the floors and mopping the floors. And I love I love what he does to sort of, after Stellan Skarsgård's character puts the equation up on the board, and he goes outside with a mop and he just like flicks some water at these two students at MIT looking at the board, and they kind of look down and sort of walk away. And that's basically him getting them out the way so he can look at this equation. And that's the first time we see anything more, any kind of depths to this character. And we see that he's not all that meets the eye. Like, he's clearly, we don't really know yet, really. We see him sort of look at it, his eyes are flickering across, and he writes something down, but we don't know what he's done or anything until later on when we find out that he's completed this super hard equation that none of these like elite students could do at MIT. And he, the guy who seems to be the janitor there, manages to do it himself. Like, it's pretty crazy, and it's our first time that we see anything more to this character other than just the impulsive thug who all we've seen from him so far is that he likes a beer and he likes to beat up people.
Yeah, I think that's when you're first introduced that he's like gifted, and he's kind of different to the crowd that he's hanging out with. I think like the biggest difference that we see throughout the film is that the paths, or like the direction or the place that the three other lads that are with him, his homies, are already kind of set. Like they belong in Boston. They they work hard, but like the jobs that they're working at is what is right for them, and like that's their ceiling almost. Whereas for Matt Damon, it's like we can see that he has much more potential. And then like we wrestle throughout the film with different characters and different challenges that come upon the main character's way, Will's way, and we see how he travels with it, how the journey like develops his character, how he responds to it, and then we see the character's flaws a lot. And I think it's just the tempo I think is really good. Like, we kind of see how he progresses on the surface really easily. We can see every emotion. We can see when he's starting to shift and when he's really uncomfortable. And I think that's what's really enjoyable about the film as well. Like, one of the aspects of it is that
Yeah.
it's just really easy watch. We know exactly what's happening and what's going to happen next, I guess. But yeah.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think the pacing is so good that we don't even realize it. I don't think Robin Williams' character comes in until at least half an hour is gone in this film, which is really interesting that one of these guys who, is the main character doesn't come in for quite some time. And I think that's quite interesting. But let's touch on something else that is an ongoing theme, which both Amelia and I commented on at rewatching. I didn't realize the score for this film is Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman, a very big composer within the film industry. He's done a lot of stuff, including Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Men in Black. I think he's done some stuff with The Simpsons, 50 Shades of Grey, Desperate Housewives.
Jack's second favorite film.
He's done like some superhero stuff. He's done Spider-Man. He's done Hulk. I think he did Superman. He's done some Batman stuff. He's done a lot of different work, and he's very well known. He's been involved in the Scream movies, which obviously horror movies, music is a huge part of that. Yeah, he was composer in the Batman the Animated Series, which is a huge TV show if you're aware about that. But yeah, Batman Returns, like a lot of different stuff, a lot of different stuff. And so he is very well known, and he just is another element to this fantastic extended cast, like the working cast as well as the acting cast that are included on this film. And yeah, I think the music is a lot more sophisticated than you'd expect from a film that sort of is exploring the sort of issues that are being explored in this film. I tend to, with these kind of films, I in my experience, I haven't really seen many original scores, and normally it's just sort of or obviously there's an original score, but it's not really notable. There's a lot of needle drops as opposed to really like purpose written pieces. What were your thoughts on the score throughout this film, David?
I think in terms of the music, it was like, how I would say it's really subtle, even though like from the opening scene, or like for the, what do you call it? The introduction to the film, like the opening scenes which play the main theme song for the track, when I think, like the violins are playing and stuff like that. It's like, it's just like really subtle but bright, and not super noticeable, if I'm honest. I'm just like, I just being very fixed onto the story is what I could say for myself. Yeah. Well,
I would definitely say that the acting performances overshine the score.
The music.
When we were talking about Joker, for me, the score goes hand in hand with that film.
For sure.
And if you took the score out, you would be left with a far diminished product. Still a very interesting and good product, but it would not be great as I believe that film to be. With this film, I agree with you that if you took it away, it wouldn't necessarily take that much away from the film. In fact, some of the most beautiful parts of the film are without any music behind it at all, and that's kind of what gives it its dramatic emphasis. But I do think at times, especially with the transitional scenes, it does provide, maybe it's a little bit of nostalgia as well, a nostalgic aspect to the film, which I found really pleasant. And I've been watching quite a few older movies recently, with like the Alien franchise and the Predator franchise that I was talking about in the last episode. And I'm really enjoying this period of sort of 90s was an interesting time in terms of art in general. A lot of super diverse in terms of highs and lows, and coming out of the 90s into the 2000s. Like the 2000s for me is when film, like there were very few films that I think came out in the early 2000s or music or art in general that I think of as really notable. And this sort of breaks that trend in the sense, not that it's in the early 2000s, but it's getting quite close to it and still is really, really promising. And well, not promising, it fulfills its promises. It's really, really good. I there is something about the music, and maybe it is just that nostalgic element that I really do appreciate. Yeah.
I think it's a good job if it doesn't stand out too much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
like in some, like you mentioned Joker, and that works well with the scene. But I think if you, like for me, I was just captured by the emotions and the, like just the acting itself, that the music just played a supporting role, but it's very in the back. Like I switched off my engineering hat or the musical hearing hat, and I just dove like can't even speak, deep dived into the film.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah.
But let's start talking about some of the best character moments and the moments in the film in general. I think that one of the awesome moments is the first time that we see what Will is really capable of, and that's in the bar. And ironically, it's to put a little like brat in his place and to impress some girls at the same time, which he very like coolly plays off as if he wasn't doing it to impress them, but clearly that was part of it. And that's and thinking back on this, I find this moment really interesting because we see the boys walk into a bar, which is clearly one of their sort of... Oh, no, this is when they go to the MIT bar, isn't it? And basically...
No, they go to the Harvard bar because like I think one of the homies are like, we should check out this
Harvard bar, right?
It's,
you're right.
It's like, and then they go in and they're like, oh, this is what a Harvard bar looks like, and
they go in with like the intention of sort of stirring it up a little bit, which
just messing around with the like a new location, and like just going looking for a brawl or a fight or whatever. Just have a fun night, like what their definition of a fun night is. And then Ben Affleck's character Chucky sees two girls across the bar, and he's just kind of like, oh, watch this, boys, watch how I do it. Quick
and
job
his little walk over to them is like
slicking back his hair,
looks into the
just
mirror,
strutting down, and then
but David, what I was going to mention about this scene, what I think is so interesting is that like we know and we find out more about Will, that he never sort of takes these chances like this. Like he'll never sort of see someone and pursue them like that. And we see in Chucky the opposite of that. He sees some girls that he's interested in talking to, and he just goes, well, I want that. I want to speak with these girls. And so he just goes straight over to them. And ironically, one of the girls is the girl that we're led to believe that that Will ends up being with, but he loses in the movie because he couldn't commit because he was scared. And I just thought that was really interesting, that sort of like, you know, juxtaposition in terms of like that impulsiveness versus that reserved nature, that self-preservation, that avoidance of the possibility of pain in the future. But continue. Like Chucky goes over to them.
Yeah, Chucky goes over to them. That's a good point, though. I think it's our first introduction to some of the characters' flaws, but very subtle. Like it's built upon.
Well, it's more of a retrospective analysis. Like you wouldn't be able to tell that at the time because Will just doesn't seem to see those girls. So, So Chucky goes over and then strikes a conversation. He kind of just goes in between the girls and he's just standing there. And then they turn to him and like look at him, and then he's like, oh hey, oh hey, and then it's like, he goes over to Skylar, who's later becomes Will's girlfriend, and he's just like, oh, I think I saw you in class. And then it's like, what class was it? And it's like, oh, I think it was history. And then a douche Harvard guy walks in with like not a man bun, but like a ponytail, and then basically flexes his intellectual muscle, basically like quoting different books and stuff like that. And then Will, being a good homie and a good friend, like walks in and then just starts sparring with him with their brains, and then Will it's hardly a spar, it's just an absolute massacre.
One way massacre. No, but the scene's really cool and fun, and like it's a good intro to like the other characters that are going to be in it. But what I really like, one of my favorite scenes is the scene that follows this after this slaughter from Will. He gets Skylar's number, they get out, and then as they're walking down the street, they walk past a deli or something, and then the same douche guy is sitting down, and Will knocks on the window, and
Hey,
he's
you
like,
like apples?
Hey, yeah, hey, you like apples? And then the guy looks over to his mate, looks back, and he's like, yeah. And then he's like, oh, well, I got her number. He slaps the piece of paper that Skylar wrote the number. It's like, well, I got her number. How you like them apples? And then it's just like a
mic drop moment. Mic drop
Yeah,
moment.
mic drop moment.
No, it's so good, so good. And like to me, like I love that moment too. It cracks me up. But the thing that I love about the moment in the bar is that like you see, and we talked about this last week as well. We talked about like the amazing feeling of watching people in their genius, like watching people in their absolute element. And at this point, like he's like quoting things and he's just like, oh yeah, you just quoted, and he finishes the guy's quote and he's like, that's on page 17 of this. And I love it when he's just like, yeah, this, you're probably first year, you're talking about this guy, and then second year, you'll be talking about this guy, and you're just regurgitating all this stuff. And then he says like, what's the line? He said, I can't remember what the dude says to him, but he's just like, but at least I won't be unoriginal. And like that's him showing like,
so the douche says to, after Will's like,
oh yeah, that's right.
You're probably gonna be teaching. You're gonna end up teaching like some students, or like you're gonna end up. I'm not gonna be here. I'm not gonna be like you and just come to bars to impress girls. And then the douche is like, well, what does he say?
He says, well, at least I'll have a degree. And he's just like, and while you'll be, and he's just like, and maybe I'll be working at a desk, but you'll be serving my kids burgers at like Burger King or something. And then he said, well, yeah, maybe, but at least I'll be original, or at least I won't be unoriginal or something like that. And like you can see, like that wasn't like sort of the best comeback he could have come back with, but the point was you could see how much that meant to him, is like not being fake, not being unoriginal. And ironically, like we find out as we go through this film that that's exactly what he is being. I love that scene, and it's so clear. Like you're just like, whoa, this guy is so intelligent. It's just crazy. And then as they're walking away, all those boys are just like, and then like, what's his name? Chucky's like to Minnie Driver's character. What's her name again? Skylar. He's just like, my boy's smart, or something like that. It was his brother, Casey Affleck's character. He was just like,
he's like, my boy's wicked smart, and then he just snaps his finger and just walks away. But I'm like, the chemistry between the characters in terms of like, this is a homie group, and following him going, oh, my boy's wicked smart. Skylar walks by, the scene cuts, and then Skylar walks past, and then it's like, hey, you're an idiot. And then it's like, I've been waiting on that side for 45 minutes and you still haven't come over to me. And then she leaves her number. But like even the interaction between Skylar and Will is like really just, it kind of goes together. Like it just falls perfectly. Like unlike what was the film that we reviewed with what's it called?
who were the characters?
Well, it's not Will Ferrell. Who am I thinking? Jim Carrey. And,
The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah. It's not awkward like that. Well, later we know that it's not their first time.
But it's like electric. it's not like that weird nervous energy. It's electric, like chemistry, and like you can tell that they're both super into each other, and they're not afraid to kind of show it or hint at it.
Yeah.
And she comes over to him and she says, she starts the conversation by saying, "You're an idiot." And he's just like, "What?" And he's just like, "I've been sitting over there for half an hour or like 2 hours waiting for you to come over and speak to me. Like, you're an idiot." And basically, she gives him his number. Like, she sort of comes onto him. And once again, he could have completely missed that. Like, this is him not committing. And luckily, she comes to him and he ends up with this beautiful relationship. And yes, it has its holes, as we'll find out. But she means so much to him. And he would have completely missed that if not for her having the balls that he doesn't have.
Yeah. Everything that's introduced in like the first half of the film that is later challenged to the main character is kind of pointed out to us, so that we can look at it in hindsight. But
and it's not the sort of things that you pick up as you're watching it, but it's the sort of things that when you think back after you hear sort of the psychoanalysis that Robin Williams' character gives, Sean gives, that's when you realize, he is doing all these things, and like Sean doesn't know about all these examples, but we've seen them. We've seen Will going through these processes. We've seen him not taking chances where he could bring himself joy, because he's avoiding the risk that is associated with that leap of faith.
Yeah, it's his the way that Robin Williams' character puts it is just like, or Sean puts it is like, it's just his defense mechanism.
Yeah,
like whenever there's something that's good that comes, like even when Will's talking about the relationships, like he's like, when he's in therapy with Sean, he's like, like I met this girl, she's perfect, I just don't want to ruin it for her. And then Sean's character, Sean challenges him by saying, is it her that's perfect right now, or is it you that's perfect right now? And I'm like, ooh, like,
and he says,
he
says he pushes people away before they get the chance to leave him. It's a defense mechanism, and for 20 years he's been alone because of that. That's what he says to what's his name?
Gerald
Lambeau. He says it to him, and Lambeau at that point is having none of it. But he's absolutely right. And this isn't Will exactly pushing people away. It's more him just holding people at a distance, not bringing them in. And at this point, all he really cares about is his three mates. That's it. He doesn't care about anything else in the world other than his three friends.
And also, I guess he doesn't know for himself what he wants yet. I think you can't say he's fully like content with where he's at. It's just that he feels safe with what he has. Yeah,
definitely.
But
definitely. Yeah. But let's move on. Let's talk about some more moments, because we've spent quite a bit of time on that scene. Let's start to talk about Robin Williams when he comes into it. And the relationship that they start to build between him and Matt Damon's character.
The first time they meet. How about the first time they meet?
Yeah.
Or even like before the first time they meet.
Yeah, let's talk about when Jared Lambeau meets up with Sean for the first time, because it's interesting. Like we see Sean's teaching in a community college. It's very clear from his attire and from the students that he's teaching that he's sort of there's a big disparity between where he is and versus like Jared Lambeau at MIT, and the fact that Jared is a professor and like Sean is just, he's in pretty casual clothes. There's a really funny line when he's in he's talking about trust. When Lambeau goes in, and he's talking about trust, which is obviously really significant, given that's like the main thing that he has to do with Will. But like when he can tell that the students aren't really listening. But what does he say? He asks a question. He said like, why is trust important?
That's a good.
And the kids just there's one of the kids who puts up his hand and is just like, because trust.
No, he doesn't put up his hand. Yeah. It's like a stark difference between where Robin Williams' character is teaching compared to Gerald, where it's like very prestigious, as you say. It's like very smart kids, and then there's these kids that are just like zoning out. And Sean points out to chooses that kid because he's kind of zoned out as well. And that's the scene I was about to mention as well. It's so funny because the guy's just like, huh? Trust is important because like
trust is life.
But and he's like, wow, very deep answer.
But he goes on, and he can tell they're not really listening, and he's just like, he says like a legit reason why trust is important, but then he also goes, and it's also important because it like gets you in it gets you in your patient's pants faster or something like that. And like some of them laugh, and he was just like, now you're tuning in or something like that. But it was just so like you would never have heard that at like sort of the illustrious university or universities that we're dealing with as well in this film. But Lambeau comes and visits him, and they go out for dinner, and they start talking about this guy, and Sean is really reluctant to take on this added responsibility. He says he's really busy, he's got a lot on, and then Lambeau convinces him by talking about like his his faith in Will, and he compares him to Einstein, not for the last time in this film, which obviously is an incredibly high compliment. But he's talking about how this guy is incredibly unique, and he wants Sean to help break him open and help open him up. And meanwhile, like this is, we should mention, the reason why he's gone to Sean is because he's tried to set it. So part of, well, I guess we skipped out when Will obviously assaulted these guys that we mentioned earlier. He got put in prison, or he was sent to court, and he got bailed out. And part of that condition was that he had to see a therapist. And so he's going through all these therapists, and they all just say, no, we're not dealing with him because he's so intelligent. He just sort of finds out their weak spot really cleverly. And I love the one where he's doing the imaginative recall type of therapy, the DBT style sort of like meditation.
Like, where are you?
Yeah, kind of thing.
How old are you,
and
Sean?
You can see
where
he's like starting to laugh, and then he just starts singing Afternoon Delight. And he's like, the therapist is about to walk out, and he's just like, what are you doing? Come on, dance with me, dance with me.
Yeah. Just makes a complete fool out of the therapist, or like just mocks them.
Yeah, he makes a mockery of the whole process, and he says like, I don't need therapy, you know. And this is why we end up seeing Robin Williams. And so his first session with Robin Williams, he sits down, and the same thing as he's done with all the other guys, he starts to sort of try and pick him apart. And to start off with, Sean, Robin Williams' character, does a really good job of sort of deflecting all of his questions, showing that he's not getting to him at all. And then
he met his match.
He finds his weak spot.
Yeah.
Will finds his weak spot. He doesn't know why it's a weak spot, and he thinks he's so smart. He thinks he understands everything, and he finds the painting that Sean has done, and he criticizes it from an artistic standpoint, flexing his intellectual muscles as usual. But then he starts trying to sort of psychoanalyze Sean by the brushstrokes and stuff, and he. To be fair to him, he comes to a realization that it's something to do with his wife. Although maybe this was completely wrong. Maybe this was painted before his wife died. We don't know. But and then he says, "You married the wrong woman." And you see,
Robin
Sean
Williams,
sort of try and sort of cool himself down. But he says like, "Never talk about my wife that way again," or something like that. And then you think that sort of that Will has learned his lesson, and then he's just like, it is that, isn't it? You married the wrong woman. And Sean just bursts across the room, grabs him by the throat, presses him against the wall, and like sort of threatens him and says, I can't remember what he says, but
so you said it early. So basically he's like, maybe you met the maybe you met the wrong woman. And then he says, maybe you should watch your mouth.
Oh yeah,
Chief.
that's right.
And then that's it, isn't it? Like, as you say, and then it's like, yeah, maybe what happened? Like, did she leave you? What, did she bang someone else? And then Robin Williams grabs him by the throat, and then he says, don't you ever disrespect my wife again, or I will end you.
Yeah, I will end you.
And
that's what he says. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Matt Damon's just like, time's up. Which is a cool thing, a cool repetition that happens later on, and the second time it happens, Robin Williams says it, but I think that's on their third time they meet or something like that. But yeah, it's a really cool scene and a cool introduction to like Robin Williams interacting with Matt Damon's character, where it's like, it feels like to me, even if like he found the weak spot, what kind of shows the audience that he's not done yet is like, as soon as Gerald Lambeau comes in, or like Stellan Skarsgård's character comes in, he's just like, oh, Thursday 4 p.m. Like, make sure he's here. Like I
love that
he met his match. Yeah, he met his match, and
it's made him even more
willing
determined.
He's willing to like go through it with him, walk through the tough with Matt's character. So it's like, yeah, that's what makes it so cool, is that it goes from like him being very professional, level-headed, just taking all the shots that Matt Damon's character Will is just throwing at him, until he finds that line and Matt crosses it so like sharply,
Yeah.
like he's just attacking him, and then he physically grabs him by the throat, and that's when it's like, oh, like shit, like this guy, like I shouldn't mess with this guy. And his posture changes completely the second time they meet.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
He still doesn't fully respect him, but he's actually no. The second time they meet, he's like no smoking or something. Or is it the third time? Did you realize that?
That's the second time. I think the second time is where. No. The third time is where he doesn't speak at all. The second time is when they go to go out to the park. Yeah,
the park bench.
But before we go on to that, I just want to mention one quick thing that I found really, really funny. This is one of my favorite like lines or like reactions in the film, and it's in this therapy session, and like he's sort of Will is trying to sort of bounce around and find little weak spots, and he says he like Robin Williams' character Sean mentions something about how he benches or he goes to the gym, and then Will's just like, oh yeah, how much you bench? And then like Sean's just like 250, and then
no 285.
285.
How much you bench?
How much do you bench?
Yeah.
And then Will's just like, and then he walks up,
pauses. Yeah. He pauses and then he changes the subject.
I found it so good. He just completely put him in his place. But you can see, like, he took no pride in that. It was just like him, sort of. He's sort of they're in the ring. They're doing the dance, you know. And I just find it really interesting. And so the next time we see them together is when they go to the park, and this is when Robin Williams gives this fantastic speech about sort of calling out Will on all these things that he tried to talk about and said he knows about. And like he starts off by saying that I really thought about what you said to me about the other day about my painting. I stayed up half the night thinking about it. Something occurred to me. I fell into a deep, peaceful sleep, and I haven't thought about you since. Do you know what occurred to me? And Will says no. And he says, you're just a kid. You don't have the faintest idea about what you're talking about. And then he goes on and he says, if I asked you about art, you'd probably give me the skinny on every art book that ever written. Michelangelo, you know a lot about him. Life's work, political aspirations, him and the Pope, sexual orientation, the whole works, right? But I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You've never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling, seen that. If I asked you about women, you'd probably give me a syllabus of your favorites. You may have been late a few times, but you can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy. You're a tough kid. If I asked you about war, you'd probably throw Shakespeare at me, right? Once more into the breach, dear friends. But you've never really been near one. You never held your best friend's head in your lap and watched him gasp his last breath, looking at you for help. If I asked you about love, you'd probably quote me a sonnet. You never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable. Known someone who can level you with her eyes, feeling like God put an angel on earth just for you, who could rescue you from the depths of hell, and you wouldn't know what it's like to be her angel. To have that love for her, be there forever, through anything, through cancer. And you wouldn't know about sleeping, sitting up in a hospital room for 2 months, holding her hand because the doctors could see in your eyes that the terms visiting hours don't apply to you. You don't know about real loss, because that only occurs when you love something more than you love yourself. I doubt you've ever loved someone that much. I look at you. I don't see an intelligent, confident man. I see a cocky, scared, shitless kid. But you're a genius, Will. No one denies that. No one could possibly understand the depths of you. But you presume to know everything about me because you saw a painting of mine and you ripped my fucking life apart. You're an orphan, right? Do you think I know the first thing about how hard your life has been? How you feel? Who you are because I read Oliver Twist? Does that encapsulate you? Personally, I don't give a shit about all that. Because you know what? I can't learn anything from you that I can't read in some fucking book. Unless you want to talk about you, who you are. And I'm fascinated. I'm in. But you don't want to do that, do you, Sport? You're terrified of what you might say. Your move, Chief.
Bro, that scene gives me goosebumps every time.
So good.
Like, so well said and so well performed by
Robin Williams. I just read it. Like, I can't even like begin to sort of put on what he does.
Even you, even you just reading it puts me back into that scene.
I mean, it's both because it is the writing. Absolutely, it's the writing, but it's definitely his performance and his sort of execution. Yeah, it's just so good. But definitely, we should give credit to the writing. And talk a little bit, and I'll find out who did the screenplay real quick.
Yeah. I think in this scene, we're kind of showing a lot about how much Robin Williams' character is just down to walk with him. I think he's hit his weakest point, or like was affected by Will's strongest words towards him, but he kind of just got back up. And it's like, you think you're tough, you think you can just push away people with your intellect, but like, that I don't care about that. I just want to know you. I just want to get to know you and help you out. And I think when I first saw this film as like a teenager, and all the themes and the meanings that this film portrays, I think it laid really heavy on me, because it talks about like identity and purpose and love and friendships and even like father figures and stuff like that. And it was everything that kind of really, like, Robin Williams' character basically becomes Will's like dad, like kind of like his dad, or his like uncle that he never had. And it's just a beautiful scene. Did you find the...
Yeah, I actually forgot, because I remember seeing this on the film, but the writing credits, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon wrote this together. So there was a screen supervisor as well, because it probably got a really good looking over, so I want to give credit to her. And that was... Where did you go? Catherine Buck. She was the script supervisor.
Catherine.
So good old Kathy. Credit to them. But yeah, wow, really, really good. And there was a lot of improv in this film. It was quite obvious to me, especially in some scenes. Like, you can tell because the laughing is so like eccentric. You can tell that they've just sort of dumped something on there, and like people laughing in lines maybe where they shouldn't be. Like it's. So like, a lot of it does come down to the skills of the acting, but the screenplay is wonderful.
Also, did you notice, I think after this scene, we see a bit after this, I think we see Will and Skylar's first date, and they're at like some sort of,
with the masks and everything.
Like, that's
masks definitely improv.
Did you notice? No, but did you notice that editing that was shown when the store owner walks in to the scene, and it's like, "Oh, you look lovely," or something like that? Did you notice that scene?
What was
anything weird? So if you watch back, and I caught it because like as soon as the scene kind of started, I saw the shopkeeper, or the old lady that was in the store, and her mouth movement is I think it's shaped like she actually ADR. Said in the shot. Yeah, the ADR was off. So like the shot, she's saying like, "How can like, do you need a hand with anything, honey?" or something like that. But then the audio is like kind of off. It sounds a bit off, and then she's like, "Oh, you look lovely in that mask, honey," or like something like that. And then I thought you caught it as well.
No, I didn't see that. But you can tell from like Minnie Driver's laughter when she's like putting on the disguises and stuff. You can tell she's just like, they're surprising each other. And like from Matt Damon when he puts on the sailor's cap, and it's just hilarious. It's really, really good. But apparently that joke that the story Robin Williams tells about his wife farting in the night. When they had that massive laughter, apparently that's fully improvised, which is amazing. Like, because that is one of the funniest moments, and not just because the story. Like, the story is kind of funny, but it's really Will's reaction. Like when he realizes that she woke herself up with her fart, and he's just like, "She woke herself up." Like, it's so funny. Watching him react to that is brilliant, and that's such a beautiful moment between them, and that's quite early on in terms of their bonding, and so it's a really special moment. It's like, they fully sort of like, laughter is one of these things that can completely disarm you, and it can completely just open you up. And I think that moment, like Robin Williams' character, Sean, makes massive progress in terms of like building a relationship with Will, and he does so with a lot of sharing, and it was quite amusing because after the movie, we finished, Amelia and I were talking about, because like I got quite emotional at certain stages, because it is very emotional, but there's also some things that really struck quite close to home for me. And and we were talking about them, and part of it was sort of the therapy aspect and how beautiful that process was. And that really was just so touching to me, how beautiful that was. And Amelia was just like, yeah, but it's incredibly unethical. Like a therapist should never divulge that much information about themselves. And I'm just like, yeah, but come on, like it's more of a like life coach role that he takes up. It's more of a like building that relationship. And in fact, what's his name? Lambeau says to him that he wants him to open him up. He wants him to sort of get through to him. And so in that regard, like the counseling is kind of coming secondary. It's really just sort of getting through to this guy and being sort of a mediator for Lambeau. Like basically Lambeau is using this therapy in terms of trying to, he doesn't see it as manipulation, but we come to see it is a little bit of manipulation, because he's trying to get him to live the life that Lambeau wishes he could have lived. But maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit there. I don't know if there's anything that really jumped out to you in terms of their relationship before we sort of start talking about where their relationship ends up between Sean and Will.
I mean, just to comment on what you were saying just at the start of it, is that, you know, I think that's like the development of their relationship. Like it's basically what Robin Williams was talking about when he was first kind of introduced in the classroom. It's like that. It's him building the trust with Will, and like Will slowly starting to trust him. Like opens up with that airplane joke, which Robin Williams uses later at the bar, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I think that it's just so human, the human aspect of Will, Matt Damon just be getting caught off guard with Robin Williams' slick, my wife used to fight in her sleep. like right after following
it's when
the
he's talking about
joke.
the imperfections in everyone. And he says, what does he say? He says... People call these things imperfections, but they're not. That's the good stuff. That's what he says. And like, and that's when he starts talking about like, this is a so-called imperfection, like that his wife used to fart in his sleep, but it's not. Like, it's so heartwarming. Like, it's something so sort of seemingly trivial, but so beautiful at the same time. And like when he says he'd tell her that it was him because he didn't have the heart to tell her that she'd woken herself up with it. Like, it was hilarious. And just really beautiful as well. Like forget their relationship for a second. I just found it so beautiful to see Sean having such happiness over his relationship as well, because he'd only lost his wife 2 years ago in this film, and that's not that long ago, especially given she'd had cancer for 6 years. And so I just think just seeing that and seeing him, and he does it multiple times, and like he says things like, I wouldn't give up a day of like her in surgery because like every day with her was a gift or something like that. And just seeing the amount of happiness and the lack of regrets that he has about the whole situation is just so beautiful. And I'm sure that people who've experienced similar grief could relate or take some kind of solace from that, some kind of comfort from seeing that, even though obviously it's not real. It's a representation of real life grief. And Robin Williams, as we know, is not someone who was devoid of suffering himself. And there's a scene where actually it's after the first session and we see him at home and he's drinking and he's in his house and there's sort of like dishes all over the place and it's a bit of a mess. And I got to admit, when I watched that scene, I couldn't help but think about the real man, Robin Williams, and what ended up happening with him. And I looked at that house and I just thought, that's the house of a depressed man. And just the look in his face, that utter seriousness that you very rarely see with him. You know, when we see him in stuff like Jumanji or, you know, Mrs. Doubtfire, stuff where it's just so over the top, it's crazy. And we just see his humanity in this film, and we know that it's not too far from the truth at sometimes. And yeah, so I think probably just take a small moment here just to say RIP to Robin Williams. And this film for me, like before I remember watching this, and when I finished it, I was just like, I get it now. I get why people were so distraught when this guy left. Obviously, obviously it'd be a tragedy no matter his ability or anything. Like every life lost to suicide is a like unspeakable tragedy. But after watching this film, I really got why he had touched so many people. I really got it for the first time, and rewatching this, it was, it did sort of hit me there a little bit. So yeah, I just want to say, so that it's been some time now since he passed, but R.I.P. Robin. I hope you're doing better up there. You're missed.
R.I.P. Robin Williams. Well said, Maggie. Well said. But just going back to the film also, I think one of the things that we see from Robin Williams' character, I know we're going to touch on like how their relationship ends up, but he challenges Will each time they meet up, because the character of Sean is he's a seasoned vet in life almost. Compared to what Will is in his 20s. Like he's 20 years old, and by the end of the film he's 21. And he has this resolve and conviction to what the decisions he made, and having no regrets about it. And he puts it as like putting the cards on the table, laying the cards on the table, and that's what I've done. And you know, there's not a day that I have regretted spending it with my wife. My wife who's passed, and the decisions he's made, like even career paths, which is later explored about the character. But this life coach, as you say, that moment each time they interact and he's challenged and Will's kind of put in his place for the first time in his life. Like he sees that Sean's not someone he can just shove down with his
we can't fool him.
Intellect.
You can't fool him.
You can't fool him.
And one of the lines that he says is, "You have a bullshit answer for everything." He says that to him.
Like he just calls him out on everything that he's doing, and Will has no answer to those things. Like
that's what we see in that second therapy session where they go to the park. Like it's astounding that like he has a few lines at the start, but once Robin Williams starts his there you go. Once Robin Williams starts his monologue, like Will has nothing, and you see him staring straight ahead as if he's trying to ignore it, but towards the end you see his eyes sort of darting around a little bit as he knows he's being seen. Like he's being seen through his BS, through all that facade. He is being seen, and he feels so uncomfortable. He's squirming in it, and he knows that this guy can see through it all, which for me makes it really interesting that he returns after that. Because you'd think that someone like that who's hiding his whole life would run from that, but I guess he doesn't really have a choice if he doesn't want to go back to prison. That's the thing. And so the reason why he keeps pushing away these therapists is so that he is the one who's in control. But now he knows he's not in control. I just thought that was really, really interesting, like that decision to come back. But I suppose he kind of has to, otherwise he's going to jail.
Yeah. And then in the second half of the film, I think what we kind of see more and more is that every single significant side character or character that's important to Will Hunting starts to challenge Will in the places that he needs to be challenged, whether it be the career path or like making a decision or taking a leap of faith. I think from Chucky to Skylar to Sean to Gerald Lambeau, like each character kind of tackles Will's weakness or like the thing that he needs to confront, and each of them are the first to kind of take the step forward and challenge it to Will, and Will's like kind of avoiding it or being like, you know, like I don't care, like I'm like with the scene with Chucky.
Oh man,
his best mate.
So let's talk about that. But first of all, we need to rewind a little bit to set up the context for that. But that is one of my favorite scenes, and I think just going off what you were saying, David, I think the reason why it strikes him so much is I actually genuinely think he doesn't realize that so many people in his life have a problem with the way he's living. I don't think he realizes it. I think he thinks it's just to like people who are trying to use him or push him into things he doesn't want to do. But when he finds out people want him to be better for himself, that's when he's just like, oh. But let's rewind a bit. So obviously, part of this contract, this deal that he has with Lambeau is that not only does he have to go to counseling, but he also is working with Lambeau on all these ridiculously complex mathematical equations, which oh my God. So we're getting to the point where Lambeau, he really wants to sort of launch Will into a career, and so he's setting him up with all these job interviews, and so the first one, actually, he sends Chucky to the interview himself, and Chucky pretends that he's Will.
Hilarious.
And so he's just like they're like, we've already offered you a job, like what more do you want from us? And he's just like, retainer. And then he says allegedly your situation for you would be concurrently improved if I had $200 in my back pocket right now.
Oh, that's hilarious. And then one of the guys at the desk who's like interviewing the character that, well, like they think it's Will Hunting, but Chucky's in his place. It's basically like, so are you asking for cash right now?
And he's just like, hey,
and he's like, hey, I'm not, I didn't say that. That's your words, not mine. And then
it's just like,
they start pulling out their wallets.
And he gets there, and he's just like, what does he say? He's just like, I'm very disappointed. Like, your reputation, it may be big here, but it's really good. And so we find out that Will is avoiding all these meetings, and then Lambeau finds out that he's been doing this, and he confronts him in his office, and like, this is just after they've proofed, like Will's gone home and proofed something for him, and he's just like, oh, I don't think this is right, and Will's just like, it's right, whatever. And then he grabs the thing off him, and like after they've sort of blown up at each other a bit, because he doesn't want any of these jobs, or that's what he says, he doesn't want to do any of these things, and he starts burning the proof. And actually, just before that, he says like, you don't appreciate like how easy this is for me, like this is like so easy for me. And like Lambeau's just looking at him like, Lambeau works his ass off for this life, right? This science, this maths, and Will has everything that he wants intellectually and wishes he had, and he's just seeing Will just not use it, not utilize this. And Lambeau is just like, you are basically everything I want you to be. And he actually says to him at the end, he says like, I wish that I never met you, because then I could sleep at night. Because he's obviously been made to feel, he says, because then I wouldn't know that there are people like you out there, and I'd be able to sleep at night. And he's obviously just made to feel so inadequate by this kid who doesn't try, he doesn't study or anything, and he just can do it. Just like that. And he talks a bit to
a scene that kind of explains how
I was just about to say
the character works is Skylar and Will's interaction at like a outdoor cafe or something, and she asks him like, how does your mind work, or like how do you do all this, like she asks, do you have photographic memory? Because for me, I've studied my ass off, and like I still don't get it. I need to try really hard, and that's what normal people do. And then Will explains it by saying, do you play the piano? And then he says, just like how Beethoven or Mozart can make amazing music, and the piano just makes sense to them. For me, I can't play music or play sports really well, but for me, these type of equations, or like just like using my brain in this way, it just makes sense to me. Like I can just do it. And that's basically,
and it's proved by that at that point where they are going through, him and Lambeau are going through one of these proofs that he's done, and Lambeau's like, oh yeah, you used blah blah blah's equation or whatever, and he's just like, sure, like if that's what you call it. Like he doesn't know the theory behind this stuff, he can just do it practically. He can just work these things out. And it's like it is outstanding, that part of the film, which is like his just vast intellect is just so impressive at the same time. But yes, he's getting all these job interviews, and he goes to work the next day with Chucky, and Chucky asks him about, like, he starts off by asking him about Skylar, and he tells, oh, we should probably talk about that as well. Sorry, I keep realizing we're jumping past these big moments. So Skylar is with Will, and they're at her place, and she says that she's about to go to California, which is where she's going to be studying, I think, her postgrad, or maybe she's gotten a job there or something. I can't remember.
She's going to med school, and then she basically like wakes him up, or like, oh, are you asleep? And then
he's
she
just
goes,
like, yes,
go to LA with me. And then I guess like her being vulnerable with what she wants, and like being super open and direct about how she feels.
Fascinating. He's just like, how do you know? How do you know that you want me to come?
Puts him in his defense mode, where he just starts to.
But you see what goes on in his head.
Every single negative, every single negative outcome. How Robin Williams' character puts it is, he lists out and he looks at every single negative aspect of, about a thing 10 miles down the road. And that's what he does. He gets into this cocoon state where he just he's just deflecting everything Skylar says, even to the point where Skylar's like, the end of the scene is just her saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then Matt Damon is just like, I don't love you, and he just walks out.
But you see see his thinking pattern when he's saying to her, like, how do you know that this is what you want? And she is just like someone who's more healthy in terms of the way she thinks about these things, is just like, I don't know, like, that's what I want, like, I feel it.
It's what I feel.
It's what I feel. And so she's just like trusting it. And he's just like, but what if, like, you find out something about me that you didn't want, and then I'm stuck out there in blah, 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 and this and that. And he's just like going through all these possibilities, like, that haven't happened and probably wouldn't happen if he was only honest with her. And like they're going through all these things. And then, like, she's like, why are you lying to me? Why are you lying? Because she's like, why don't you want to come? And he's just like, well, I live here. He's like, 2 reasons. First of all, I live here. No, first of all, I work here. And second of all, I live here. And it's just like, it's so clearly just like a bunch of crap. And she's just like, why are you lying to me? And he's just like, what do you mean I don't lie to you? And she's just like, oh yeah, what about your 12 brothers? And then when she says that, that's when he just like loses it. And it's just like, what do you want me to tell you? You want me to tell you I'm adopted? You want me to tell you that, like, I was beaten by my dad and he put cigarettes, like my stepfather, my foster father put cigarettes out on me? And she's just like, you can see the shock and the emotion. And she is fantastic. Minnie Driver in this scene, oh my gosh, she is brilliant. She's so good. And you can see her, like, as she's hearing these things, she's just... you can see her eyes and she's crying, and she's just straight away just like, I didn't know that. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. And he's just like, is this what you wanted to hear? And she's just like, no, I don't want to hear that, but I just want you to share with me. And he's like inconsolable at this point, and he just loses it. And like, he ends up like punching the wall and pushing her against it. And like, it seems almost for a second as if he's about to like physically assault her. And then she's like, does the classic thing of just like, look, tell me, if you can tell me you don't love me, then like I will stop calling you, or something like that. I'll stop talking to you. And you can tell.
No. It was more like I don't want to, like, you know, it's because I don't want to, you know, be separated from you. Like, it's so that I won't be forced in a situation that I can't call you. I don't call you. So if, like, it was basically like, if you tell me you don't love me, that's going to destroy me or like break me. And then he basically just does it. Because I think... not because he doesn't, but because that's... He sees that as the easier way out. Yeah. He sees that as the escape, and he just takes it, which... yeah, I think there's heaps of regret and there's a lot of reflection. And then I think one of the scenes, like one of the things that kind of like show us that he is developed and finally kind of come out of his shell is that a week has passed, and after that had passed is when he has this conversation with Chucky, his best mate. Yeah. So we're back here finally, which all of that was important context, but so Chucky says like, how are things going with Skylar? And he Matt Damon tells him, he says, like, Will says,
yeah, we broke up, and he doesn't really talk about it, and he just sort of shrugs it off. And then Chucky keeps asking him questions because he clearly cares about the guy, and he's just like, so what about these job interviews? How are they going? And then like Will thinks that this will be like an acceptable response. He thinks Chucky will want to hear this, and he's just like, oh, I don't want to do this stuff. I don't want to be like sitting behind a desk and everything. I haven't showed up to any of them or something like that. And Chucky's like pissed off. He's like really pissed off, and like Will's genuinely surprised about this. And Chucky says, and this is one of the best lines in the film. He says,
"Don't take me the wrong way, because I'm your best friend." But
if you're, because Will says to him, he says, "What do you mean? I want to grow up here in Southie. I want to we can buy houses next to each other. We can raise kids and stuff. And like when we're 40, and he says to him, if you're here like when you're 40, I will fucking kill you."
Yeah.
And
he's like straight up like, I'll kill you. And that's not a if, but that's a fact. Like, I'll kill you.
And Will is just like, what? He doesn't understand. And then Chucky says this amazing line. He says, you know what the best part of my day is? For about 10 seconds when I pull up to the curb and when I get to your door, because I think maybe I'll knock on the door and you won't be there. No goodbye. No see you later. No nothing. You just left.
It's like, wow.
I don't know much, but I do know that. And it's just like, wow. And he says to him, he said, I would kill to have what you have. And I think
anyone here that's working with us right now, even then.
Oh, what does he say? He says like, you would be you would bring shame to us or something like that. I can't remember what he says, but like.
No, it's like, you don't because Matt Damon, Will's like, everybody's saying like, I owe it to myself. And then he's like, no, you don't owe it to yourself. You owe it to me. It's like, you owe it to me, or like us. And then, that's when he starts saying like,
but he says something about like, you were like, if you were still here in 40 years, like you would, something about like, you would bring shame to every single person here or something like that. Cause they all know that you shouldn't be here. They all know that you should be somewhere else. And I think that's the one that really resonates with him, to hear. And I think it's really beautiful at the same time, even though it's incredibly abrasive in the way that Chucky delivers it. But it just shows that like Chucky really cares about his mate. Like he wants to see Will fulfill his potential more than he wants to selfishly keep him around, because they are best friends, right? But his care for Will is more authentic than his selfish desire to always have his mate around. Because I'm sure like, part of Chucky would love the idea of, growing up, being old, like having kids, and like kids being friends with each other with Will, but like he wants to see Will fulfill his potential. And I just think that that's really special. And I think you really feel the weight of that at the end of the film, where he does rock up and you can see that smile on his face as he realizes that Will is gone. And that's so heartwarming for me, like that, to see that love for his friend, that it's just like, he's sad, but at the same time, he's so happy because he's just like, yeah, Will, you did it. You finally left. Like you're finally going to where you need to be going.
And then just to like ease the heartwarmingness, like Ben Affleck's brother, like he's smiling and he runs from the back seat to the front seat because he's like, yes, great, I can sit at the front now. But every single scene that he has at the end, second half, like the last time he's with those significant characters, each scene just moves so powerfully. Like it's all so beautiful. Even like after this one, like we're getting the orders a bit mumbled up and jumbled up, but after this one, I guess he sees Robin Williams.
Yeah, let's get into this. Let's talk about this scene,
because
No, you go ahead. Sorry. I just wanted to say, like, this is the scene, this is probably the scene that if people are listening, they're being like, hurry up and get to this scene. This is the scene. Like we've already hinted at the start of the show. So go ahead. Like let's... Basically,
Gerald Lambeau, who's like the guy who's given Will this opportunity to meet Sean, but also kind of found him and then looked after him, got him out of prison on this, like, with this agreement of seeing him once a week to answer the math questions, but also see the therapist who he's prepared. And they're going, like, him, Lambo, and Sean are going back and forth about what's really the best for Will. Like, what really is the best thing? Like, and Sean is like the humane, like the human side of like, let's do what the boy wants. Like, we have to do what's best for him. Like, he's a good boy. Like, he's a good guy. Like, we have to kind of lead him to that direction and give him that push. That's what he needs. And Lambo is like struggling with like, what he needs is to maximize his potential. And basically, like how you said it earlier, it's like he wants him to fill the shoes that he could never fill. Like he has the potential, the tools, the skills to reach higher, like heights that Lambo could never reach.
And you can see how like Lambo in this scene is just so despicable and so unlikable because everything he's just making about him the whole time. And like every time like Robin Williams will say something about the boy, like he'll find a way to be like, oh, this is just you being jealous of me, or like, you want the award, just I'll bring it in for you. And it's just like he's just so arrogant.
It's not about your effing. It's not about your effing medal. It's not not you.
He's so arrogant. Like, and Sean just completely calls him out on it. It's just like he calls him an arrogant prick. And like it's just really despicable. And what's interesting is that's when Robin Williams does talk about like this guy, like he's terrified of abandonment. He leaves people before they leave him to stop him from getting hurt. And he said like, if you leave him over this, then you'll just prove him right, and like we'll be right back to square one. Or like if you push him now, he's never like he's gonna be gone. Like he's not gonna be able to be reached. So like he sees this Matt Damon or Will Hunting's actually just outside the door and listening to like the last few seconds of the conversation, and then he times his opening to kind of like approach and be like, oh, is this a bad time? I can come back. But then it's like, no, I was just leaving, and Lambo leaves the room. Well, because Lambo wanted him to be there. That's why he was there in the first place, because he was panicking that he hadn't rocked up to his appointment and that he thought that he was going to have to go back to jail. So and this was right after they had a pretty confrontational session before, which is why he was late, because they had a sort of, Robin Williams challenged him again in the previous session, and he said like, what do you want to do? Like, and he wouldn't answer, and eventually he's like, it's really funny, but he's being a smartass. He's just like, oh, I want to be a farmer, I want to
shepherd. I want to tend to some sheep.
And he's just like, oh yeah, you want to be a shepherd? Yeah, get out. And he just like, he's just had enough. And it's interesting because instead of just getting out, like, he's actually just like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, we're not done.
I thought we were friends. Like, we still have 15 minutes. And he's like, if you're going to give me bullshit answers, then you can leave. Yeah. And then it's basically like, even as he's leaving the room, like, Robin Williams is funny. Like, I can't remember the last call.
He walks out,
like,
he's just a shepherd. What the
no, he's basically like, you're the shepherd, and then
that's right. Yeah. But yeah, let's continue. So obviously there's been a bit of tension beforehand, but he is back for this session. It's not the last one, but it's the most dramatic one for sure.
Which is not as like dialogue heavy as all the other scenes, but it just starts off with like Robin Williams holding the file on like Matt Damon's like history, and he's like, just his like information. And then we're shown photos of Matt Damon's bruised body as a child, and like stab wounds that he has at his lower abdomen on the left side. And basically he opens up again. I think one thing that like the momentum of trust that continues to build between the two characters, one thing that's done beautifully, even though Amelia called it out, it's like, oh, this shouldn't be done in a professional setting, is that Sean opens up before, or like he initiates the opening up.
Will says to him, he's just like, have you had experience with this? And then Sean's just like, I've seen it in several patients and stuff. And then Will's just like, no. Do you have experience with this? And he's just like, oh, you mean personally? And then he was just like, I had a drunk stepfather or something like that. He'd come home late at night, and I had to provoke him to stop him from beating up my sister and my mother. And it's just like, holy crap. Like for people who are blessed enough to have not experienced anything like that, it's just so confronting to hear that kind of abuse. And obviously this is a dramatic representation, but this stuff is real. And that's why it evokes such strong emotion out of us, because we know that these are real stories out there. And there's a good chance that we've known people who have been through something like this and we don't even know about it. And it's just horrific. And then we get a bit of a back and forth between them, and Will says, yeah, like my foster father used to put down a belt and a wrench on the table and say, pick which one. And then like Sean's just like, well, you choose the belt. And Will's just like, no, I chose the wrench. And he was just like, why would you choose a wrench? And he's just like, because fuck him. That's why.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God, like this is, wow. Like this is heavy. This is real, this is like real trauma. And you're right, David, like he is opening up, but it's in a factual way, you know, it's a matter of fact where it's just like, you're not talking about the emotion, you're talking about the physical nature of it. And you're talking about like sort of in a relatable sense, because, and maybe, as you said, David, maybe he doesn't open up if Sean doesn't open up first. And it's almost like, I did kind of get this feeling like there's this Monty Python skit where, there's these bunch of guys and they keep wanting up each other in terms of how bad their life was. So it starts off as just like, like I got beaten the other day, and it's just like, oh, you got beaten? Well, I got like shot or something like this. And then it ends up so ridiculous, just like, you had a house, all I had was a cardboard box. And it's just like, you had a cardboard box? All I had was, and it just keeps going more and more ridiculous. But like, it almost felt like the way Will responds, it's almost like a one-up. It's just like, oh yeah, like my foster father put down a belt and a wrench. And it's just like, not.
I think for me, I disagree on that. I feel like that's him opening up to share exactly what his thought process was. And like, he has that flashback of as Robin Williams is sharing and opening about his experience, Will has, like, Matt Damon's character is like recalling what he went through. And then he sees like,
for sure. I don't mean that the only motivation behind it was to one him up,
but it seems like that. I get it.
I feel like there was that was part of it. Like that was part of what brought it out of him. Not like fully, but just like an element, you know, like
sure.
Yeah, part of him did want to kind of just like show like he'd been through more. But
basically the full stop, like the flood of emotions, like the highlight of the scene of Robin Williams just saying, you know, I don't know your whole story, I don't know you, like, but I just want to say it's not your fault. And like, it's just a repetition of those words that
and Will's kind of just
character
like
just needed to hear.
Will's kind of just brushing it off at first because he doesn't realize. He's just like, I know, I know.
Yeah. He's like really soft at the start. I think he plays it so beautifully. Like they work really well together in the scenes. That it's just like the eye contact and like
or the Sean lack of eye contact at times as well.
Lack of eye contact at first, and then by the end, just like they're both really just face to face to each other and just looking at each other's eyes and like, Matt Damon is just, he finally has his release. All those years of holding on to that emotional baggage and that pain and the suffering that he went through by himself is just like, he's able to grieve and release it at that moment.
Like just beforehand, it's really interesting. Just before he breaks, he says like, "Don't fuck with me, Sean. Don't fuck with me." And it's almost just like, for a second he thinks, like his defensive mechanism just kicks in for a second, and he thinks, "Are you trying to do something right now? Like, are you?" And then that's when he really looks at him, and I think he sees how genuine Sean is, and he just breaks down, and you just get the sense that this is the first time he's ever really like processed, or not even processed, but allowed someone to share the burden of this. And just the crying is just awful. Like it's just so
heavy.
Yeah. It's this scene just, I think I could watch it 100 times and it would still make me cry. Like, I'm a bit of a sook when it comes to movies, but this scene, far out. There's so many strands for me in this, why it makes me so emotional. But a big part of it is definitely like that sort of that masculine side, like that two men like sharing grief and sharing like their pain in the most beautiful, vulnerable way, and holding each other up. And there's just such a beauty to that. And no one could watch that and say like either of them are weak or either of them are, you know, like anyone can see that there's such strength and beauty in that scene. And it just really hits home to me. And like, just also not just that, but from the boy's perspective, from Will's perspective, like seeing a kid who thinks he understands everything and is just really scared of the world and everything. Like, I feel like we've all got that scared little boy in us somewhere, and some of us it's more totalitarian than it is for others. Some of us it really pulls our strings all the time, like it does with Will's character. He's hard as nuts, but there's this little boy in him that determines almost every decision he makes, and he's hard. He's a hard guy, but there's this little voice within him that really does determine how his life goes. And it determined how his relationship almost ended up. It determined how his whole life almost ended up in terms of staying in Southie when he could be more than he could be. It determined how he pushed everyone away. Like it determined how he almost ended up in prison for the rest of his life, because these decisions are made like from that little boy. And I just, it's just so beautiful, this scene. And like it's one of those moments where it's just like, this makes the movie. Like the rest of the movie is brilliant, don't get me wrong, but like if you had this scene in a bad movie, it'd still be a great movie.
This would make up for the, just say, 2 hours of trash that's before it or something.
Just absolutely brilliant,
beautiful scene. Like it's just like from the voice that and the tone that they use to like the Matt Damon's grip on his hug, like how tightly he holds, and he's
burying
Robin
his face
Williams.
in his shoulder, and
like it's just so real. Like it felt like they weren't acting, and we were actually peeking into a therapy session for a moment, and it's just magical. This scene, and I'd say the bench scene are probably my two favorite scenes in the whole film.
I personally prefer him and Chucky. I love that scene so much, and I'd even put the scene of Chucky going to his house for the last time. I'd even put that above the bench scene. I love the bench scene too.
Oh wow!
But the Chucky scenes, those two Chucky scenes for me are just magical. Like they're so beautiful, and it's more of what's underwritten in them that's so beautiful. Like everything in that bench scene is all on the table, and it is gorgeous, and the monologue is great, and it's been sampled so many times in other things. The bits about like love, especially, you always hear that in like little compilations of like, you know, I've always heard those things around, but just so many brilliant moments, and just what a wonderful cast to bring together a beautiful story and just bring it completely to life and just make it feel so real. And apart from that fight scene, I don't find this movie dated at all. The only dated thing is the visuals, but everything about it is so relevant today. Like there's nothing that doesn't feel like it could be in a neighborhood, like, you know, in a bit of a rundown neighborhood anywhere. Like this is just so authentic.
Some of the most like prettiest scenes are when they're just in the car as well. The colors and like you just see it's like a mid shot of just their faces looking out the window as they're cruising together, and like just the colors that they use to just show like them moving back and forth from the city, and like just the clothing, the attire, like the costumes, I mean, and like it's just it just works well together, like perfectly. Which makes me like really wonder, like, where I guess we're leading to it of like, what do we rate the film? I can't remember if we used 5s or 10s last time.
I think we did both.
We said 10. Oh, we did both. Okay.
Do we? Let's like from now on, let's just do it from 10. Let's make that a thing.
Yeah. Let's just keep it consistent. Do you want to go first? Out of 10.
Out of 10. See, the one thing that I always struggle with these ratings is I can't help but part of it is based on what was this movie trying to do. And in terms of what this film was trying to do, I think it achieved everything. And it's really, really hard for me to find a flaw in this film, which makes me want to give it a 10 out of 10. But to do that would say that it's the perfect film and it's my favorite film of all time, which I don't feel confident in saying that. So I don't know what could have made it a 10.
But then for me, the dilemma is like, what? Yeah. Oh, I guess it's the same as you.
I think I'm going to give this a 9.5.
9.5. Wow.
We should start taking notes
fair,
of these ratings. So I'm going to give that a 9.5. David, what you got? What are you going to go with?
Well, I'm going to go and say a confident 10 out of 10.
Wow.
Because I think, as you say, like, I can't think of anything that's like bad about the film. And if there was anything that I thought that was bad, I think by the end of the film, it kind of coats everything like wonderfully. So like, yeah, I think it makes you think like how, I think it makes me question and think about how I should deal with my own relationships and emotions and friendships and what true friendships look like or should be like, I guess. And like, sometimes like another like so many lessons in this film that I feel like could be so applicable to life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like Lambo's you know, like form of showing love or care for the character of Will Hunting was kind of, in Sean's perspective, manipulation. But at the same time, it's like, do I see myself kind of manipulating or kind of thinking what's best for a person in my own perspective? And am I wrong in those cases? And like, I don't know, it makes me think a lot about how I should deal with my relationships.
Well, I think what's interesting about the Lambo relationship is you can see it a lot in like examples of bad parenting, where sometimes a parent will try and live through their kid, and that's what he's doing. And so I wouldn't confidently say, like, I think you've given him more credit than I would give him. You've said that's his way of loving him. I don't think so. I don't think he does love him necessarily. Like, he says to him, "I wish I never met you." I really do think that. I don't think he's a fully bad guy, but I think when it came to Will, he just got so caught up in Will's potential and how he wanted to, like, Will lived the life that Will had the potential to live the life that he wanted. And I think there was a jealousy and a self-absorption in that relationship, because we see a truer side and a more pure side to him at the end, where him and Sean kind of not resolve, but they come together and they sort of forgive each other. And they go out for a drink, and it's a nice happy ending between those two as well. Even if it's not perfect, because Sean says like, "Oh, like, I'll buy you a drink at the next reunion," and then like Lambo's just like, "The drinks are free," and he's just like, "I was being ironical."
Ironical, but I think that's just meant to be like some sort of inside joke between the two characters.
Well, I think it's because it's ironical isn't a word, so that they just laughed because they're professors. They're both extremely intelligent, and so for them, that's a little smart joke. Ironical, it's not really a word.
I also just, like, if we're mentioning funny scenes, even Will and Sean's last scene where it's like, all right, that's it, time's up. It's like, yep, you're free. And then they hug, and then it's like, does this break our therapist and client, like, patient relationship? And it's like, I'm not it's all good unless you like touch my butt, and then they just laugh off. And so good little subtle comical moments, which, like, I
also didn't realize, and I don't know whether this was the original first use of this line or whether this was a reference to it as well, but I didn't realize that this is the movie that gave us the "son of a bitch, he stole my line," like that line. I don't know whether this is a reference to that or whether this is the first time it was mentioned, but that line has been reused heaps. It's like one of those, you know, funny lines that people tout out. It's like a catchphrase at this point. He says that right at the end when in the letter he's like, "I'm gonna go see about a girl,"
Yeah.
which is really, really nice way. And so everyone sort of has somewhat of a happy ending, but it doesn't feel kind of like fairy tale. Because things haven't been resolved, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
no one has like a completed story, but they all like are heading in the right direction. Like Lambo, he doesn't get you think that that he's finally gotten his kid in the job, but he ends up leaving.
Yeah.
Sean is going on kind of like a self-discovery to try and sort of get back in the world, like Will was trying to convince him that he needed to do throughout the whole movie. The boys now are one man down, and they're going about their usual sort of shenanigans without their friend. And Will is now going chasing after this girl, but we don't know whether like how that's going to turn out. We think it will be good because she does say when they have a phone call like a couple of weeks later, she does say that she loves him still, and she would say that to him, and so that shows that she was hoping that he'd say it back and there'd be some kind of resolution. So clearly she hasn't fully given up on him quite yet. So maybe, we can be hopeful for Will and Skylar that, things will end up well. But yeah, it's a positive finish to a film without making it feel really corny and sort of, like Disney-ish.
Yeah. It's a great ending, man. Like even the ending, I think it's just great. Yeah. Not much more to say.
Nope. Thank you guys for joining. Sorry, David, did you have one more thing to say?
Yeah, like I think if you guys haven't seen the film yet and you just heard or like listened to us speak for like an hour and a bit now, definitely go check it out. I'd say with confidence, just because I don't think if I compare it to many films that I've seen in the past few years, and now coming back to it, I can with confidence say this is my favorite film. So
wow.
Go check it out. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here first, guys. David's favorite film until we review, I don't know, 50 Shades of Grey or something like that. But until then,
I might change.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for staying tuned in. I hope you enjoyed our review of Good Will Hunting, a film brought to you by Gus Van Sant, starring Matt Damon as Will Hunting, Ben Affleck as Chucky, Robin Williams as Sean, Minnie Driver as Skylar, and Stellan Skarsgård as Jared Lambeau. We'll catch you on the next one.
Peace.